Statues, too, and there are statues everywhere. It's a classic totalitarian regime. So there's gigantic statues everywhere you go, and you have to treat the statues with respect. And again, this is enforced by law, and you are subject to arrest, and I'll give an example of somebody who was arrested. The statues are gigantic, and you need to be very careful when you photograph the statue, because you need in every photo to take the photo head on. You can only get a picture of the front of the statue. If you take a picture of the side or behind, it's very rude, could get your camera seized, your photos deleted, could get you arrested. You also need to take a picture, when you take a picture of the front of the statue, all the way from the foot to the head. So if you get only half of the person in, like the upper half, what you do for a really tall statue that you're having a hard time fitting in your frame, you can also be arrested for that. And people, they do, the North Korean guides do peek in your viewfinder as you take photos and will correct you. They will take your camera. One college student, while I was there, he was not in our group, but it was the same period I was there, young guy, he couldn't get all the way back, and the time he had to get the whole statue in his viewfinder, so he laid on the ground right in front of the statue and took a picture up, which is actually pretty clever, and got feet to the head all the way in. He was immediately arrested. He was held for a day and a half. They threatened him with prison, and he just, was trying to follow the rules. I was trying to take a picture of the whole statue, and I couldn't get it all in my frame. He was released, but I mean, it is that sensitive. We stayed at a lot of different hotels during the trip, so I've taken the best and the worst as examples in the interest of time. The best was absolutely gorgeous, the Hyeongsang Hotel, that's in Central Korea, semi-recently refurbished, has a swimming pool, a spa, a nightclub, karaoke, and you'll see inside here an Olympic-sized indoor swimming pool, great big workout area and spa, and a lobby that is gleaming to within an inch of its life. But as you look at these photos, does anything strike you about them? There's no people, that's correct. With this gigantic hotel, I don't recall ever seeing another guest while we were there. There might have been one other, but and we were told unofficially by other people who know the country well that it's kind of reserved for just the senior leaders and their immediate entourage, and therefore closed to visitors a lot. I don't know for sure that that's true. But I do know that very next morning, I went out in the private balcony of my own room with a cup of coffee, sat in a chair, and was able to take this picture of a valley. Absolutely gorgeous. We were allowed to visit schools, taken through schools, hospitals, and other locations. And we were urged, because there wasn't much there, to bring gifts. So it was September here, beginning of school year. So I went out and bought a whole bunch of stuff. This was just part of it, 2 grocery bags full. Brought it to North Korea, and then was able to give it out to the kids at the school. And I thought it might be an issue. They might think, there was like communications devices hidden in the calculators or something, but it seemed not to be an issue at all. They probably went through them when they were in my hotel room over several days. Before I went to school, I'm pretty sure they would have. I just don't know for sure. But it was one of the best parts of the visit. The kids are incredibly cute, very well behaved, and friendly as friendly as they could be to strangers coming into the room. Very talented. Again, these would be showpiece schools that we were taken to, and I do fully realize that, and you should too. But they were real kids in a real school, and they were just incredibly cute. As at any school, whether in the States or here, there were lots of shows. They were very good. Some playing instruments, some dancing, some singing. In fact, we saw children in dozens of different settings throughout the country because we drove around for weeks. I saw many, many hundreds of children coming out of schools, walking along streets, people smiling, holding hands, being normal people. As we got up in some of the more remote areas, we traveled briefly with a group of kids there, and this is a little boy. I just love the look on his face, because I think he's escaping from his parents, as any little kid at that age is going to want to do, in Moran Hill. That's the park in Pyongyang. We were actually asked by the doctors at the end of the tour if they could ask us questions about the United States. And one of the questions they asked is because they were very proud of their hospital and convinced they have the best medical care in the world. They asked if it was true in the States that virtually every child in America is born at home because people don't have access to hospitals. And I said, no, it's not true at all. And they were very polite, but I could tell they didn't believe me. The other part of the theater, and I wrestled with whether to include this because I was afraid it would sound wrong, but it's instructive, emblematic, I think, of North Korea. One of the women in our group asked the guide, with all of us in the van, she said, "Is every woman in North Korea beautiful?" And the guide didn't really quite know how to answer that. And of course, the answer is no country has all beautiful women or all handsome men. What is true is that in Korea, and there's a lot published on this, there's a very specific process to travel throughout the country. Government officials, they identify attractive young women and then groom them because they want pretty people, attractive people, primarily women, in public-facing roles. This map, which I have up here, was created by a Canadian couple, a husband and wife team who went. Best map of North Korea I've ever seen. And it's useful in a lot of ways, but there's a lot of verbiage and photos. And the husband and wife team said, we have agreed that the traffic cops in Pyongyang were the most beautiful we have ever seen and had the best choreography for the least traffic we'd ever seen. So I had to look a little deeper into Pyongyang traffic women, because who would have thought? And it turns out there's lots published on that, and articles around the world with lots of specifics. The way they're picked, it's considered a very prestigious job, and there's a website, I checked it yesterday to make sure it's still up and running, called, and I know you'll all run right out and look at it, the PyongyangTrafficGirls.com, and it has lots of things. To be a traffic cop in Pyongyang, you need to be female, unmarried, attractive, healthy, at least 5'4", and between the ages of 16 and 26. What happens to the traffic women when they turn 27? I do not know. You may remember the finger incidents. So you can see these guys who were real unhappy about one of their crewmen being killed, their ship shot up, and they're being taken hostage. Once they realized, and it's not clear how they realized, once they realized that the North Koreans didn't know what flipping the bird meant, they did it in every photo that was taken of them early on in their stay. And one North Korean asked them what it meant, and one quick-thinking young sailor said, "It's a Hawaiian good luck sign." Yeah. Really funny, of course, until these things are reported in the media, in the Western media, and the North Koreans, who want more than anything not to be embarrassed, realize they'd been made fools of. These men had already been treated badly, beaten, starved, and they were beaten to within an inch of their lives after that. And eventually, the combination of physical and mental abuse, they actually held a gun multiple occasions to Commander Bucher's head and dry-fired it, that is, shot it, but with no bullets in it. Each time he thought with the click he was going to die. After a year, he did sign a so-called confession. It was immediately retracted when they were released, and after about a year later, they were allowed to go. You'll remember the famine, of course, that killed 1 million, maybe 2 million North Koreans. Right now, it's not getting any media coverage in the West. I had to look hard for this. It does appear that the worst drought since 2002 is now impacting North Korea, meaning that another famine, especially with the tighter sanctions, another famine could be on the horizon. And obviously the worst thing about that is the human suffering. These are men, women, and children who will very possibly starve to death in the thousands, hundreds of thousands, possibly millions. But it really has to be said, regional and global stability are also a big factor when you look at the likelihood of famine in North Korea. Picture a desperate, starving North Korea. A North Korea with nuclear weapons 10 times the size of the bomb we dropped on Hiroshima, and they're starving. How could those weapons be used to extort food, aid, what other types of things? It's not a pretty scenario.